parentage. The Gandhis belonged to the Baniya caste and seem to have been originally Grosses, but for 3 generations from my grandfather, they have been prime ministers in several Kathiawar states. Uttamchand Gandhi alias Ota Gandhi, my grandfather, must have been a man of principle. State interviews compelled him to leave Porbandar, where he was divan, and to seek refuge in Junagadh. There he saluted the Nawab with the left hand. Someone noticing the apparent discourtesy asked for explanation, which was given thus: the right hand is already pledged to Porbandar. Ota Gandhi is married a second time, having lost his first wife. He has 4 sons by his first wife and 2 by his second wife. I do not think that in my childhood I ever felt or knew that the sons of Ota Gandhi were not all of the same mother. The fifth of these 6 brothers were prime ministers in Porbandar, one after the other. Kaba Gandhi was my father. He was the member of the Rajasthan court. It is now extinct, but in those days it was a very influential body for settling disputes between the chiefs and their fellow classmen. He was for some time prime minister in Rajkot and then in one canner. He was a pensioner of the Rajkot state when he died.
Childhood. I must have been about 7 when my father left Porbandar for Rajkot to become a member of Rajasthani court. There I was put into a primary school and I can well recollect those days, including the names and other particulars of the teachers who taught me. As at Porbandar, so here there is hardly anything to note about my studies. I could only have been a mediocre student. From this school, I went to the suburban school and thence to the high school, having already reached my 3rd year. I do not remember having ever told a lie during the short period either to my teachers or to my schoolmates. I used to be very shy and avoided all company. My books and my lessons were my sole companions. To be at school at the stroke of the hour and to run back home as soon as the school closed, that was my daily habit. I literally ran back because I could not bear to talk to anybody. I was even afraid lest anyone should poke fun at me.
Playing the husband. About the time of my marriage, little Pampers costing a piece or a pie. I now forget how much used to be issued in which conjugal love, thrift, child marriage, and other such subjects were discussed. Whenever I came across any of these, I used to go through them from cover to cover, and it was a habit with me to forget what I did not like and to carry out in practice whatever I liked. Lifelong faithfulness to the wife, inculcated in this booklet as the duty husband, remained permanently imprinted on my heart. Furthermore, the passion for truth was innate in me, and to be false to her was therefore out of the question. And then there was very little chance of my being faithless at that tender age.
I have already said that I was learning at the high school when I was married. We three brothers were learning at the same school. The eldest brother was in a much higher class, and the brother who was married at the same time as I was. Only one class I heard of me. Marriage resulted in both of us wasting a year. Indeed, the result was even worse for my brother, for I gave up study altogether. Heaven knows how many youth are in the same plight as he. Only in our present Hindu society do study and marriage go through hand in hand.
Stealing in a tournament. I have still some of my failings during this meat eating period and also previous to it, which date from before my marriage or soon after. A relative and I became fond of smoking. Not that we saw any good in smoking or were enamored of the smell of a cigarette. We simply imagined a sort of pleasure in emptying clouds of smoke from our mouths. My uncle had the habit, and when we saw him smoking, we thought we should copy his example. But we had no money, so we began to bluffing stems of cigarettes thrown away by my uncle.
My double shift. The time of which I am now speaking is my 16th. My father, as we have seen, was bedridden, suffering from a fistula. My mother, an old servant of the house, and I were his principal attendants. I had the duties of nurse, which mainly consisted to dressing the wound, giving my father his medicine and compounding drugs. Whenever they had to be made up at home. Every night I massaged his legs and returned only when he asked me to do so or after he had fallen asleep. I loved to do this service. I do not remember ever having neglected it all the time at my disposal. After the performance of the daily duties was divided between school and attending on my father, I would only go out for an evening walk either when she permitted me or when he was feeling well.
Next one night came. Uncle was then in the yard. I have a faint recollection that he came to judge us, having had news that my father was getting worse. The brothers were deeply attached to each other. My uncle would sit near my father's bed the whole day and would insist on sleeping by his bedside after sending us all to sleep. No one had dreamed that this was to be the fateful night. The danger of ghosts was there. It was 10:30 or 11 p.m. I was giving the massage. My uncle offered to relieve me. I was glad and went straight to the bedroom. My wife, poor thing, was fast asleep. But how could she sleep when I was there? I woke her up in 5 or 6 minutes. However, the servant knocked at the door. I started with alarm. Get up, he said. Father is very ill. I knew, of course, that he was very ill, and so I guessed what very ill meant at the moment. I sprang out of the bed. What is the matter? Do tell me. Father is no more.
From my 6th or 7th year to my up 16th, I was at school, being taught all sorts, all things expert related. I may say that I failed to get from the teachers what they could have given me without any effort on their part, and yet I kept on picking up things here and there from my surroundings. The term religion I am using in this product seems meaning thereby self realization or knowledge or self being grown in the Vaishnava faith. I had often to go to the Haveli, but it never applied to me. I did not like this glitter and pomp. Also, I heard rumors of immorality being practiced there and I lost interest in it. Hence, I could get things from the heavenly.
Chapter 11. Preparation for England. I passed the matriculation examination in 1887. It then used to be held at two centers, Ahmedabad and Bombay. The general poverty of the country naturally led Kathiawar students to prepare the nearer and the cheaper center. The poverty of my family likewise decided to me the same choice. This was my first journey from Rajkot to Ahmedabad, and that too without a companion. My elder wanted me to pursue my studies at college after the matriculation. There was a college in Bhavnagar as well as in Bombay, and as the former was cheaper, I decided to go there and join the Samaldas College. I went but found myself entirely at sea. Everything was difficult. I could not follow, let alone taking interest in the professor's lectures. It was no fault of theirs. The professors in that college were regarded as first rate, but I was so wrong. At the end of the first term, I returned home.
Chapter 12. Outcast. With my mother's permission and blessings, I set off exultantly for Bombay, leaving my wife with a baby of a few months. But on arrival there, friends told my brother that the Indian Ocean was rough in June and July, and as this was my first voyage, I should not be allowed to sail until November. Someone also reported that a steamer had just been sunk in a gale. This made my brother uneasy, and he refused to take a risk of allowing me to sail immediately, leaving me with a friend in Bombay. He returned to Rajkot to resume his duty. He put the money of my travelling expenses in the keeping of a brother-in-law and left word with some friends to give me whatever help I might need. Time hung heavily on my hands in Bombay. I dreamt continually of going to England.
I saw that very few amongst my audience knew English, as I felt that knowledge of English would be useful in that country. I advised those who had leisure to learn English. I told them that it was possible to learn a language, even at an advanced stage, and cited cases of people who had done so. I undertook besides to teach a class. If one was started or personally to instruct individuals desiring to learn the language, the class was not started, but 3 young men expressed their readiness to learn at their convenience and on condition that I went to their places to teach them. Of these 2 were Muslims, and one of them a barber and the other a clerk. And the third was a Hindu, a petty shopkeeper. I agreed to suit them all. I had no misgivings regarding my capacity to teach. My pupils might become tired, but not I. Sometimes it happened that I would go to their places only to find them engaged in their business. But I did not lose patience. None of the 3 desired a deep study of English, but 2 may be said to have made fairly good progress in about 8 months to learn enough to keep accounts and write ordinary business letters. The barber's ambitions was confined to acquiring just enough English for dealing with his customers. As a result of their studies, 2 of the pupils were equipped for making a fair income. Thank you.
In London at last. I did not feel at all seasick. But as the days passed, I became fidgety. I felt shy even in speaking to the steward. I was quite unaccustomed to talking English and expect for Sijut Basmudar. All the other passengers in the second saloon were English. I could not speak to them, for I could rarely follow their remarks when they came up to speak to me, and even when I understood, I could not reply. I had to frame every sentence in my mind before I could bring it out. I was innocent of the use of knives and forks, and had not the boldness to inquire what dishes on menu were free of meat. I therefore never took meals at table, but always had them in my cabin, and they consisted principally of seeds and fruits which I had brought with me. Sijut Mazmudar had no difficulty, and he mixed with everybody. He would move about freely on deck, while I hid myself in the cabin the whole day, only venturing up on deck when there were but few people. Sijut Mazmudar kept pleading with me to associate with the passengers and to talk with them freely. He told me that the lawyer should have a long tongue, and related to me his legal experiences. He advised me to take every possible opportunity of talking English and not to mind making mistakes which were obviously unavoidable with a foreign tongue. But nothing would make me conquer my shyness.
My faith in vegetarianism grew on me from day to day. Sal's book weathered my appetite for dietetic studies. I went in for all books available on vegetarianism and read them. One of these Howard Williams, The Ethics of that Biographical History of the Literature of Human Rights from the Earliest Period to the Present Day. It tried to make out that all philosophers and prophets from Pythagoras and Jesus down to those of the present age were vegetarians. Dr. Anna King found the perfect way in that was also an attractive book.
Changes. Let no one imagine that my experiments in dancing and the like marked a stage of intelligence in my life. The reader will have noticed that then I had my wits about me. The period of infatuation was not unrelieved by a certain amount of self-introspection on my part. I kept account of every farthing I spent and my expenses were carefully calculated. Every little item such as omnibus fares or postage or a couple of coppers spent on newspaper would be entered and the balance struck every evening before going to bed. That habit has stayed with me ever since, and I know that as a result, though I have had to handle public funds amounting to lakhs, I have succeeded in exercising strict economy in their disbursement instead of outstanding debts have had invariably a surplus balance in respect of all the moments I have led. Let every youth take a leaf out of my book and make it a point to account for everything that comes into and goes out of his pocket, and like me, he is sure to be a gainer in the end.
As I kept strict watch over my way of living, I could see that it was necessary to economize. I therefore decided to reduce my expenses by half. My accounts showed numerous items spent on fares. Again, my living with a family meant the payment of a regular weekly bill. It also included the courtesy of occasionally taking members of the family out to dinner and likewise attending parties with them. All this involved heavy items for conveniences, especially as if the friend was a lady, custom required that the man should pay all the expenses. Also, dining out meant extra cost as no deduction could be made from the regular weekly bill for meals not taken. It seemed to me that all these items could be saved, as likewise the drain on my purse caused through a false sense of propriety.
An English passenger talking kindly to me drew me into conversation. He was older than I. He asked me what late, what I was, where I was going, why I was shy, and so on. He also advised me to come to table. He laughed at my instance of abjuring meat and said in a friendly way, when we were in the Red Sea, it is all very well so well, but you will have to decide your discussion in the Bay of Biscay, and it is so cold in England that one cannot possibly
Raichand Bhai, I said in the last chapter that the sea was rough in Bombay Harbour. Not an unusual thing in the Arabian Sea in June and July. It had been choppy all the way from Aden. Almost every passenger was sick. I alone was in perfect form, staying on deck to see the stormy shug and enjoying the splash, the waves. At breakfast, there would be just one or two people besides myself eating their oatmeal porridge from plates carefully held in their laps, lest the porridge itself find its place there.
The first case, visiting Bombay, I began on the one hand my study of Indian law and on the other my experiments in dietetics in which Virchand Gandhi, a friend, joined me. My brother for his part was trying his to best get me brief. The study of Indian law was a tedious business. The civil procedure code I could in no way get on with. Not so, however, with the Evidence Act. Virchand Gandhi was reading for the solicitor's examination and would tell me all sorts of stories about barristers and wakils.
On the way to Pretoria, I soon came in contact with the Christian Indians living in Durban. The court interpreter, Mr. Paul, was a Roman Catholic. I made his acceptance as also that of the lad Mr. Subhan Godfrey, then a teacher under the Protestant mission and father of James Godfrey, who is a member of the South African deputation, visited India in 1924.
On the way to Pretoria, I soon came in contact with the Christian Indians living in Durban. The court interpreter, Mr. Paul, was a Roman Catholic. I made his acquaintance as also that of the late Mr. Subhan Godfrey, then a teacher under the Protestant mission and father of James Godfrey, who as a member of the South African deputation visited India in 1924. I likewise met the late Parsi Rektamji and the late Adamji Miakan about the same time. All these friends who up to then had never met one another except on business came ultimately into close contact, as we shall see later.
Preparing for South Africa, I was no doubt at fault in having gone to that officer, but his impatience and overbearing anger were out of all proportion to my mistake. It did not warrant expulsion. I can scarcely have taken up more than 5 minutes of his time, but he simply could not endure my talking. He could have politely asked me to go, but power had intoxicated him to an inordinate extent. Later, I came to know that patience was
not one of the virtues of his officer. It was usual for him to insult his visitors. The slightest unpleasantness was sure to put the Sahib out.
Christian contact. The next day at 1 o'clock, I went to Mr. Beckett's prayer meeting. There I was introduced to Miss Harris, Miss Cup, Mr. Cott and others. Everyone kneeled down to pray and I followed suit. The prayers were supplication to God for various things, according to each person's desire. Thus the usual forms were for the day to be passed peacefully, or for God to open the doors of the heart.
Seeking touch with the Indians. Before writing further about Christians, I must record experiences of the same period. Sheikh Taib Haji Khan Muhammad had in Pretoria the same position as was enjoyed by Dada Abdullah in Natal. There was no public movement that could be conducted without him. I made his acquaintance the very first week and told him of my intention to get in touch with every Indian in Pretoria. I expressed a desire to study the conditions of Indians there and asked for his help in my work, which he gladly agreed to give.
What it is be a coolie? It would be out of place here to describe fully the condition of Indians in the Transvaal and the Orange Free State. I would suggest that those who wish to have a full idea of it may turn to my history of Satyagraha in South Africa. It is, however, necessary to give here a brief outline.
During the war, many officers and soldiers had come to South Africa from India and Ceylon, and it was considered to be the duty of the British authorities to provide for such of them as decided to settle there. They had in any event to appoint new officers, and this experienced men came in quite handy. The quick ingenuity of some of them created a new department. It showed their resourcefulness. There was a special department for the Negroes. Why then should there not be one for the Asiatics? The argument seemed to be quite plausible when I reached the Transvaal. This new department had already been opened and was gradually spreading its tentacles.
My brother helped me up and practically stopped all communication. I was deeply distressed, but it would have been greater distress to be my duty, and I preferred the lesser. But that did not affect my devotion to him, which remains and as poor and great as ever. His great love for me was at the root of his misery. He did not so much want my money as that I should be well behaved towards the family. Near the end of his life, however, he appreciated my viewpoint when almost all his death bed he realized that my steps had been right and not me a most pathetical letter.
So the community was asked to submit the names of the representatives who were to from the deputation. Color prejudice was of course in evidence everywhere in South Africa, but I was not prepared to find her the dirty and underhand dealing among officials that I was familiar with in India. In South Africa, the public departments were maintained for the good of the people and were responsible to public opinion. Hence, officials in charge had a certain courtesy of manner and humility about them. And colored people also got the benefit of it more or less. With the coming of the officers from Asia came also its autocracy and the habits that the autocrats had imbibed there.
Greetings to everyone. We all are gathered on occasion of Gandhiji. I am Hamna from 5th A. The officers at the head of the new department were at their loss to know how had entered the Transvaal. They inquired of the Indians who used to go to them, but these could say nothing different. The officer only ventured a guess that I might have succeeded in entering without a permit on the strength of my old connections. If that was the case, I was liable to be arrested. It is a general practice on the termination of a big war. The invest or the government of the day with special powers. This was the case in South Africa. The government had passed a peace preservation ordinance which provided that anyone entering the Transvaal without a permit should be liable to be arrested and imprisonment. Thank you.
I added to tell you the truth. The work for which you had called me is practically finished. But I believe I ought not to leave the Transvaal so far as it is possible, even if you permit me to return home instead of carrying on my work from Natal. As before, I must now do so from here. I must no longer think of returning to India within a year, but must get enrolled Transvaal Supreme Court. I have confidence enough to deal with the new department. If we do not do this, the community will be hounded out the country, besides us being strongly robbed.